I think whenever we hear about a situation like occurred in Charlottesville over the last couple of days, aside from the initial shock and horror, it always brings my mind back to realizing that everyone in that situation is just like me. The level of hate, the level of fear, given the right conditions, could be enacted in the same way. I have those seeds of those same emotions, and they erupt in their own way every day. And the hope of the counter-protesters and the anger and the outrage ripens in my mind every day. And so it's useful, I think, as we think about exploring monastic life, to look at really what can we do in this life, given who we are, the skills we have, how much can we change people right now? And yet, to have any sense that there is something beyond the appearances of this life gives us an opening. To have any sense that we have a greater potential than what we have on the surface gives us an opening. And that we've met the Dharma, that we have the inner and outer conditions to practice and cultivate the qualities that can lead to our full awakening, is a source of tremendous hope and optimism. That as we purify our own minds and diminish and eventually completely eliminate those very same afflictions, we'll have the skill, we'll have the means, we'll have the wisdom, and we'll have the courage of our compassion that can make a huge difference. That's focused on relieving the suffering of every living being by training everyone to realize their potential. So we're in training. We're in school. Of course, we can help as we can, but our real focus is on cultivating those qualities and realizing our potential as quickly as possible, so that we can relieve every living being of all their confusion, to realize their full potential and become Buddhists too. So let's do this session in our lives with that motivation. So this session is on the Abbeys Values. I fantasized about doing it in the dining room because it's such a nice picture to have this website there. They're all on this page in the website. And it's kind of small and you can't see it from there. Huh? No, I meant in the dining room so I could put it on the screen. Right? So here's the visual. Very nice. Yes. Yes, that's Lumbo Jumpa Sangmo. That's what you want to know. So you'll just have to visualize this. But we've referred to the monastic mind prayer a few times in the course of this course, which we'll also refer to today. But before there was a monastic mind prayer, there were principles that the Abbey was founded on. And they're all on the website. They have been on the website since the beginning. The monastic mind prayer reflects those. But Dharma principles, I added the for everyone because it was a website. But there are Dharma principles that, to me, the Venerable Children sat down, laid these out, thought about what are the principles that our monastery will be established on before there was a monastery, before we had this property. before there was anything physical, she knew in her mind that these were the principles that this abbey would be founded on and how they would be acted out. And that's the text that's still on this website that forms the whole foundation of what we're doing here. And mostly we're not aware of it. Mostly, unless we study these, this is why she had me do this. She said, you're passionate about these, you should talk about them. Because I think we should study them every year, so this is our time to do it, she said. To remember that those are the foundational principles that we're operating out of, and to see how everything grows from these. So what I thought I would do today is talk about them. We'll do some of the text here and talk about them, and then I wanted to put them on the board and just brainstorm which Abbey guidelines and activities and stuff fall under which of these principles, so that we can actually do a little acting out of oh, this is how this manifests in the real world, right, in our daily lives. So that would be the process today. So we know the prayer, right? Monastic mind is one that is humble, imbued with the Buddhist worldviews, dedicated to cultivating mindfulness, clear knowing, love, compassion, wisdom, and other good qualities. That sort of sums it up. A monastic mind comes from a heart that is humble, receptive, kind, compassionate. Monastic mind is inquisitive, sincere, eager to learn, and wise. It doesn't come automatically when we take ordination. We develop it throughout our lives. So the 7 principles that she had laid out are non-harmfulness, compassion, generosity, mindfulness, gratitude and respect counts as 1, humility and willingness to accept instruction, humility and willingness to accept instruction, that's 1, and rejoicing. For those who are looking at this on your computer, I'm going to reverse the order of the last 2. So non-harmfulness is like the basic of all the Buddhist teachings, right? Non-harmfulness, the very first fundamental of the ethics. A compassionate attitude is included as a part of non-hatred, which is patience devoid of intention to injure. Non-harmfulness observes the suffering of sentient beings and thinks, may they be free of such suffering. The function of non-harmfulness, not injuring sentient beings, is said to be the essence of Buddhist teachings. So interestingly, non-harmfulness on the list of 11 virtuous mental factors is often said to be compassion. But we have broken it out. So we have non-harmfulness as the first and compassion as the second. So in the non-harmfulness, the way Venerable has laid it out, we practice not harming each other, first of all. No weapons, no sticks, no clubs, no punches, no physical violence really at the Abbey is not really accepted. But also what we're practicing, and this is a whole lot harder, is non-harmfulness through our speech. To practice just learning, training that our speech can be kind and timely and substantial, meaningful, and truthful. Cultivating those qualities in our verbal interactions with one another, which helps create this fundamental sense of harmony in the community. Right? And in order for us to have that sort of non-harmfulness of speech, we also have to have non-harmfulness in mind, which is even harder. As in, not having malicious thought, not holding grudges, not retaliating from harms, not judging each other. That's not on the list, but that's also the mental there. So it entails developing our capacity to listen to each other with compassion. And she says this is the heart of practicing Dharma with the people that we live in community with. Right? I mean, this is a little bit obvious, but it's important, I think, to make it explicit. If you have a group of people who, well, first of all, who are slugging each other, that is not a peaceful environment. If you have a group of people who are griping each other, arguing each other all the time, it's not an environment that really is conducive to practicing the Dharma. And so even if in our minds we're harboring malicious thoughts and so forth, it gets in the way of our practice. Agreed? Yeah. So there's some really external ways that we also practice non-harmfulness as a community. Being vegetarian is one of them. You've seen the no hunting signs all over the property? That's one of them. It's based on that intention of non-harmfulness. I don't know how much people know about the building that's going on over there, but the decisions that are made in all of our buildings are to make them sustainable, ecologically friendly, making choices in our buildings that are kind to the environment. That's a part of our ethic of not harming. And then, as much as we might gripe about how many times we wash the saran wrap and reuse it, this is also a part of the ethic of not harming, that we carefully recycle, that Venerable Tarpa goes around and collects all that stuff, sorts it, cleans it because we all haven't cleaned it properly, dries it because we all haven't dried it properly, because if it goes to the dump or it goes to the recycle place and it's not clean, they won't take it. So that effort, that extra effort that she's putting into, and if we remember to keep the things, wet things out of there, it's good for us too, is all a part of the ethic of not harming. So it has a really broad base, even though sometimes the things that we do are a little bit tedious. Right? So I need a scribe with a decent handwriting. You. I'm glad you're back. You know your job. Okay, non-harmfulness. Are there other things that we can think of that we do at the Abbey that are expressed non-harmfulness? Yeah, care of the animals, the cats or the care of the deer? Care of wild chicks. Nonviolent communication training, yeah, because the saving of the water is actually thinking about the long term. The second one is compassion, and so as I said, that's in some ways it's non-harmfulness. We also know that compassion is the wish for sentient beings, including ourselves, to be free of suffering and its causes. His Holiness has a definition. He talks about this in Ethics for the New Millennium, which I really appreciate. I think about this a lot. He says the Tibetan word ninje, did I say that right? How do you say it? Ninje. Ninje is translated simply as compassion. He says it's much more complex and dynamic than that. The word encompasses love, affection, kindness, gentleness, generosity of spirit, warm-heartedness, a feeling of connection for others. That's what's all packed into the big package of that word, compassion. So I think for me, it's kind of like a one-line thing. Oh, compassion. Wishing for others to be free of suffering. You can do that in one, you don't even have to hit the carriage return. But no, says His Holiness, it has all of these other qualities in it. This quality of warm-heartedness and kindness and gentleness and so forth, which rounds it out hugely. And then it makes, from my point of view, it makes everything that we do in relationship to one another as a resident community, and then all the embracing of the people who come or with whom we interact, becomes a part of that practice of compassion. So the way Venerable laid it out, she says, living together as a community is part of our practice of compassion. And then she says, community life has its blessings and its challenges. We receive the support of like-minded people. Our Dharma friends understand each other. We have the same goals. We create a peaceful atmosphere together because we're practicing non-harming. On the other hand, we have different ideas. We have different preferences. We have different ways of doing things, as our offering service prayer says. How does it go? Doing things may arise is the way it's written, and will arise is the what's true. Different ways of doing things will arise. Will. They do. They do. Will do arise. Maybe do arise. These are natural and a source of creative exchange. Our minds don't need to make them into conflicts. That's our practice. And so that's also part of our practice of compassion, right there. Right? That we have different ways of doing things. So giving up our preferences, giving in that my way may not be the only way something could be done. I may even harm her that it's the best, but I can also let it go. It's not the only way things can be done. So to think about that as a part of our practice of compassion, it kind of warms it up, I think. There's I didn't think about this, or I would have brought it forward. There's a story, Venerable Tarpa may remember this. It's when we talk about the Six Harmonies of living together in community, there's a thing where the monk who is it Anuruddha? Who the Buddha says, how is it that you all live so well together? Yeah? And the monk says, I think it's Anuruddha. And he says, well, we look at each other with love, we care for each other with love. I do what they want. I do what they want. I always stumble when I come to that, because it's like, what? No. What does it hurt me to do it your way? Well, I'm not so good at that. I mean, let's just say that. Everybody knows that. But the thought, what does it hurt me to do it your way? If it's not harmful to the environment, it doesn't break any precepts, it doesn't violate any kind of ethical code, why not do it your way? I do what they want, he said, and that contributes to our harmony. That's our practice of compassion in community. I think it's really a beautiful aspiration. Maybe it's a beautiful practice. We live with others and cannot do everything the way we like. We have to give up some of our preferences for the larger group to function smoothly. We have to soften some of our opinions and ways of expressing them to live harmoniously. I remember when I first came here, so many things. But one that I remember quite vividly that was a big turning point for me, because I spent a lot of time, I used to say I was a hedonist before I was a Buddhist. So I spent a lot of time cultivating a sense of fine things like food, nice cheeses, organic vegetables, fruit that's like perfectly ripe. Those kinds of things were like sense pleasures I was quite into. And so we have always shared the cooking here, most of the time. And the first time I saw someone grind up an extremely expensive cheese to put on the chili, I thought I was going to die. I was so freaked out. Like someone had offered us this beautiful chunk of, I don't know, Stilton or something. It was on the chili. A couple of years later, a similar thing happened. And I thought, c'est la vie. There goes the nice cheese. The chili was good. So we learn over time that the things that we think are right when we come, things that nobody does this way or everybody does it this way, well, they don't. And it's not the only way something can be done. And so then embracing that as part of our practice of compassion so that we can live together harmoniously is part of the foundation of what we're doing here. Also, Venerable says we're not Buddhas. We are Buddhists, but we are not Buddhas. We all suffer from ignorance, anger, and attachment. So in community, it's impossible to continue the habit of blaming others for our own unhappiness. Have you noticed this? I went through a period where I was really missing blaming. Oh man, I was missing it. I'm not above it anymore either, trust me. But there was a period when you really start to notice, like, I can't do this anymore. It's not true. So when we stop blaming others and actually take responsibility for what's going on in our minds, for our own mental states, this is part of our practice of compassion. We're no longer harming each other in that way. And when we start to do that, then we have much more patience, fortitude, affection for even other people when they're suffering with their afflictions. So it's cultivating a mind of compassion that can hold each other in a space of not wishing people to be free of their suffering, genuinely holding it in that way. So, she says, to become bodhisattvas, we must cultivate patience and compassion for both others and ourselves. Living in community provides an opportunity for us to do so. The rock tumbler works, but it's not easy. The rock tumbler hurts. Since we want to become bodhisattvas, we must train to bear hardships with a happy mind, thus transforming difficulties into Dharma practice. So that's the very foundation of what the Abbey is built on. So let's do some compassion ones. What are some things that we do that you think act out this fundamental value of compassion? Empathy buddies. Yeah. Be supportive of people when they're struggling mentally, emotionally. Yeah.
Take care of stray cats.
We take care of stray cats. My goodness, do we? Yeah. Yeah, we do. In a really thoughtful way. We don't just feed them. We get them fixed. We find homes for them, or you guys do. Hmm?
We keep them entertained.
Yes, the cats. Yeah, we use have-a-heart traps for the mice and the other creatures. Yeah, so we do those BBC talks, like difficult situations in the world, or answering people's questions, or answering people's personal issues. Yeah, we do care for our visitors and guests, and people come here for spiritual counseling too. When they have stuff in their lives, they come here. Yeah, the prison outreach program. Supporting giving support for the homeless teens locally. Yeah, teaching the class at the Unitarian Church where we're helping people cultivate compassion and working with their minds in different ways. The SAVE courses, the courses here, the teachings, sharing the Dharma Day, all out of out of the compassion of wishing people to be free from suffering. Wishing others to be free. Venerable going around the planet also is act of compassion. All the books that are produced here that include more than just Venerable, it's 28. This is her 28th volume, and that she just came out. That's a huge amount of books, and the whole community support is what makes that possible. By herself, she couldn't do it. And we study and meditate on compassion. So flourishing the Dharma for the long term, for the future. So holding the Vinaya, doing all the Vinaya rites that we do, doing our confession, doing the Varsa, doing the Pravarana. Those 3 rites that the Buddha said, are the requirements that for a fully functioning Sangha community that help establish the Dharma in a place. Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot. So a fundamental value, obviously, is that compassion in that broad definition. That's another reason that we're here. So then the third principle is generosity. Now, Venerable had this first on the list. I have reordered this a little bit. And I think in some ways in her mind that is first. But I think for us in developing our understanding of it, that it comes next is okay. But it's huge. What she says, all right, so let's see. Generosity is the wish to give our body, possessions, and virtue or merit to others without the wish to receive anything in return. And as people have been there on the Friday night talks, you all haven't all been there, but we talked about giving 3 or 4 kinds of things, giving material possessions, giving protection to those in danger, giving wise Dharma advice, giving the Dharma, and giving love. So Venerable's statement here, and we say this a lot, the monastics of Sravasti Abbey endeavor to live generously through dedicating our lives to the Buddha's teachings, practicing them earnestly, and offering them to others. We trust that people will value our way of life and work, and will respond generously by providing what is needed to live and spread the Dharma in modern society. So that's this economy of generosity that we talk about here. Since monastics live simply, although we do give also generously of our resources to the best of our ability, the thing that we really are offering is the Dharma. Most pointedly, and all of those things that we already just talked about, the spiritual counseling, the UU class, the safe classes, the classes here, Venerable's teaching around the world, other monastics going to teach, the books, the writing, the prison outreach, all of that is also the practice of generosity and of sharing the Dharma. And a really fundamental, as you all know, that she is so emphatic about is that the Dharma is to be offered freely. And then in our culture, we need some training in what that's about. We need some training in what generosity actually is, because we're so capitalistic. We can't help it. We're born into that society, right? We trade 2 jelly beans for 1 marble. From the get-go, we're negotiating and trading and dealing from the time that we're wee little. But the idea of actually giving out of a spontaneous heart that wants to give, that's also actually a part of American culture, I have to say. More, I think, than most Western countries. And this is just speaking from my background as a development director. Volunteerism in this country is some of the highest in the world, as well as the what's called the third sector of the nonprofit sector, which we rely on as a culture to provide for the needs of people, and the generosity and philanthropy of Americans is great. That's actually true. I think it's not so great in Europe, and I don't know how it is in Australia, other places. But at the same time, we're pretty transactional in our thinking. So to cultivate a wish or a mind that really gives because we want to give with no thought of return, that's something else. So I think in the way Venerable has set it up in training the community to be able to give the Dharma freely is huge training for us in that practice of generosity. Because, I don't know about you, but I find that easy to do. Right? Do you find that easy to do? To give the Dharma in the way that we do, the way it's set up? And I would say personally that the influence has been also then to make it easier for me to give in other ways. Just because that's the culture of the place. Do you think so? Has that been your experience too? Yeah, I think that's true. So it's clear all the things that we do to give freely as a monastery and also then as individuals. We also look at Venerable Children as our example. We don't say no very much. Need help? We're there. Somehow. Maybe not in the way you asked, but we're there. So we also practice generosity as a community by our offering service. And this one is, this is a part of that training that, your BBC really spoke to this the other day. When we talked about how, it's easy to get into, work. But, actually several people have brought it up. The thing about the motivation, if our mind is turned towards, no, I'm offering service to the community. I'm offering service to the Dharma. Then it becomes a practice of generosity and we're actually making merit. As long as we're vacuuming with a cranky mind, there is no merit being made. The floor is getting clean, thank you very much, but there's not much merit in it. But to do that same task with a wish to be of benefit or to help is helpful. Venerable Children shared a story once that has really stuck with me, and I use it a lot. She talked about how she was staying at a place, taking teaching somewhere, so she was staying at somebody else's group house, I think it was, and people were just not washing the dishes. And she was finding herself there just doing the dishes, meal after meal, thinking, I'm purifying all the years I lived in community and was so angry because other people didn't wash their dishes. That was the mind she would take to that task. So I find it useful here when there's something, especially over there where there is no one assigned to do the dishes. So after a couple of days when that thing is soaked, that jar of milk has been soaking for a while, I'm going to wash it. I'm going to wash it for all the times that I have done the same thing with a happy mind. Or really I have the same practice with the soy milk containers. That's my personal practice. Okay. I'm going to wash this for the benefit of all of us. I'm going to drink this last 2.5 drops at the bottom of the soy milk container and cut it up. And if I can't do it with a happy mind, I'm not going to do it. So it's a practice. But it becomes then a practice of generosity if we can apply those things to our mind. And so that's really why offering service is so much a part of our day here. That generosity of offering our effort in all these ways to perpetuate the Dharma. So that 10,000 years from now, with any good luck, and good karma and good merit, the Buddha's teachings still exist and people still have a pathway to liberation. Because when it dies out, I don't know how long it takes for another Buddha to appear, but everybody's karma's got to be in the right position. So we perpetuate this as long as we can, and we do that by our practice. We do that by our practice. Okay, what are some other ways then? Let's brainstorm generosity. Some other ways that's enacted as a foundation of the Abbeys values, principles. Making lunch, you betcha that's an act of generosity. Thank you, Venerable Sotram. It was a great lunch. Thank you. We live on generosity. Yeah. we make offerings to the Buddha Dharma Sangha on several altars every day and at different times. Giving away the firewood to people who don't have opportunities, who don't have the resources to keep themselves warm in the winter. Yeah. Yeah, we give to the food bank. When we have extra food and stuff. And other charities. We give to our teachers. You know, we make offerings for their projects, not just, you know, outside of Venerable Children, but other monasteries. Yes, everything is offered freely in the books, the T-shirts, all that stuff too. Yeah, it's not a Dharma store. Yeah, gifts of gratitude. That's nice. Nice way to put it. Yeah, the generosity of sharing Dharma, and that's the biggest outpouring that comes from here. Well, I'd put that under generosity. Why not? Pujas and prayers for people, and also compassion. That counseling, or just letting somebody talk. It needs to be heard. Yeah, like that. Generosity of love. Yeah, yeah. Yes, the videos and talks online. It's a lot. Thousands of them. The volunteers that come here. Yeah, well, you know, I wonder, just giving people the opportunity to make that merit. You know, so many people are involved and how wonderfully. And I'm always grateful, but I never thought about it as also giving people an opportunity, but it's true. Oh, people transcribe teachings, people with technical ability. You know, volunteers totally run our online presence, almost. You know, the website, the Facebook page, all that stuff. We don't. No. Yeah, when we switched both of these websites for tipchinchitter.org, how many people? 40 people worked on that website. We had on SravastIAbbey.org it was fewer, but I think maybe 12. I don't know. Anyway, a lot of volunteers work on those kinds of things. I suspect when a monastic dies, we'll have them.
We check on each other.
Yeah, we do check on each other. Yeah, we check on each other, but definitely supporting the death of the animals around us. So DVDs, go to the inmates. Malas, we make malas and send malas to the inmates. That's right. Yeah, lots of correspondence. It's a huge amount of generosity. Doing the Preda offering every day. Yeah. Yeah, every day we're offering to the Preda. Huh? The Sur practice too, yeah. Cool. Yes, feeding the turkeys in the winter, the deer in the winter, the squirrels, anytime they can find anything.
Birds.
Yeah.
Yeah, bird houses.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we don't have enough whiteboards for this exercise. Somebody else should take a picture though before we have to. But we have one. I think we get mindfulness up. Okay, let's go on to mindfulness. Bunny condos. Yeah, the bunny condos for sure. The bunny condos, the flying squirrel houses, the bluebird houses. I mean, we've done a lot of specialty building. Flicker houses. Mindfulness. Built on mindfulness. So, the technical definition, mindfulness is non-forgetfulness with respect to familiar phenomenon. So you can only be mindful of something that you actually already are familiar with, or remember that you're familiar with. It's one of the qualities. It has the function of causing non-distraction. That's its function. And it has these 3 points underneath it that aren't so relevant, but you know, Venerable's already talked about this in the teachings this time. So we talk about mindfulness in meditation, of course, is, you know, keeping your mind focused on the object. But even before we do that, underneath that is the foundation of ethics. And so being mindful of our precepts, which is right there in our prayer, we are mindfulness of our precepts and values. That means we're familiar with our precepts because you can only be mindful of something that you're familiar of, an object that's familiar. We're familiar with our values. We know what our values are. We know what these things are. They have a name, we've thought about them, we've reflected on them, we've chosen them consciously. And then we're mindful of our precepts and values. Cultivate clear knowing of my thoughts and feelings. Clear knowing was the term she was using for introspective awareness. That week, yeah. Yeah, that was in a phase where that was the tested term. But it works better in the prayer. But that's what that means. So I'm not only mindful, I have the introspective awareness that reminds me what my values are, what my precepts are, and checking up, am I remembering them? So there's many other things that are written under here. So we are attentive to act according to our precepts if we're mindful of them. Then in the prayer, being mindful of love and compassion, we bring those attitudes into the situations that we're in. So if we're holding that as a value, then we're trying to maintain that throughout the day. Being mindful of emptiness, we try to contemplate how our interactions are, how things are dependently arising, how they're all empty of true existence, that exist on a conventional level as appearances. If we can bring that mindfulness into a situation, then it's suddenly the situation is not so vivid and real. To be mindful, we must slow down and be more attentive to what we are thinking, feeling, saying, and doing. And so we also cultivate mindfulness and sensitivities to others' needs. Not just our own, but others' needs. Nice paragraph here. She says, participating in community life is part of the Abbey's cultivation of mindfulness and compassion. Because we care about others, we practice doing our work with joy. Now, because I like having a happy mind, I practice doing my work with joy. Because I care about others, I practice doing my work with joy. That's a little bit of a side benefit. But what she's saying here is no. Let's work on a different kind of motivation. Because we care about others, we practice doing our work with joy. Without simply rushing through it at the last minute to get it done. Our mindfulness and compassion manifest in other ways too. We follow the daily schedule. So we're mindful of the schedule. It takes a while to get used to the schedule. I will admit, but because it changes every day. But it actually has a pattern. It takes a while to get used to what the rhythm is. Yeah. There is a scale. Well, yeah, it all circles around. But we're mindful of what that schedule is, and keeping the schedule actually is it's really the most basic community behavior that keeps things going. So we're mindful of the schedule, we follow the schedule. Because we're also valuing everybody's energy and participation. I think you don't have to be here very long to realize the difference between how it feels when everybody is all focused together on something or when there's a handful of people not there. You notice it. We really notice this in winter retreat when we're just completely, we're not talking very much, so we're more on an energetic level and interaction with each other. If that cushion next to you is empty, there's a hole there, you know it. So we have this sense that we're moving together as a community. So participation, contributes. Our participation contributes to the whole. That is not to say that if you're sick, you should get up and keep pushing. It's none of those things. But because that's also then participating. Coming from a person who fights that. But it is participating in thinking of the whole. How we move is an expression of our mindfulness and compassion. How we walk, walking with gentle steps. If we're stomping around, even if we naturally walk heavy, we're putting a certain kind of energy into the environment. And the noise of clomping steps disturbs others. However, if we're practicing compassion, we will put in our earplugs and just deal with it. We balance it out. Our mindfulness extends to how we open and close doors. When I was in Taiwan in training, they were even trying to show us how you don't make a sound when you put the cup on the table. No sound. You know, it helps. It helps to be that careful. When we're in the bathroom, you make sure that if you've splashed water all over the sink, not just the sink, but the counter, they dry it up. Sometimes it goes in there, I think, what duck took a sink? And then you take the towel, and you're going, now I'm going to practice my participation and dry it up. But so we're aware of what we're doing in the environment. Or all the times that the food goes down the traps when monastics are washing their bowls, we don't empty the traps in these sinks here, and then however often the people who have to go send a snake down that sink have to go unplug the sinks. But if we're mindful, we're aware that we just dumped a handful of grain and some lettuce leaves in there, and we take it out and put it in the garbage. It's part of our mindfulness and practicing compassion community together. Speech is another area where mindfulness is important. It may be difficult to reverse some habits of speech, such as being sarcastic or critical when we're angry. Or humming. May be difficult to reverse the habit of humming when we work, but we're cultivating mindfulness to cut that out too. We continue to cultivate mindfulness of intention to speak truthfully, kindly, harmoniously, and at appropriate times. So those are the 4 kinds of right speech. And think about, this is interesting, because I know people really work at this, because we talk about it. Think about creative ways of expressing our feelings in appropriate ways. You know, so as people come, everybody probably has this experience. If somebody comes to me and says, gosh, I need to say this, I really need to bring it up. Let's talk about how to say it in a way that's going to be beneficial. You know, how can I say this without sounding like I'm angry? Because I'm not. But it does need to be communicated, but it's hard to be said. You know, so really thinking about how we communicate difficult things becomes a part of our mindfulness practice. You know, developing that skill. Practicing mindfulness and compassion in our daily interactions at the Abbey prevents our bodhicitta meditation from becoming abstract. Makes it real. It's comparatively easy to love and feel compassion for those who are hungry and cold in other countries. Oh, our heart just breaks. We can visualize giving our possessions and our merit to all these sentient beings, but caring for the few people around us, when it entails giving up some habits and wishes, that's hard. Challenges our self-centered attitude much more. And that's why practicing community is so valuable. Okay, that's a lot about mindfulness. What else? What other practices of mindfulness do we do at the Abbey? Yeah, I would say. So when we set our motivation like the first thing in the morning, and then to the extent that we check it throughout the day, it helps us establish that's what something we're being mindful of. Yeah. And that's our... Yeah, when we sit to eat or drink. Being mindful to tuck in our chairs whenever we leave the table. Just the fact that we're doing morning and evening meditation. Say a little bit more about that. Etiquette and comportment. Being mindful of that.
Yeah, how we move,
So mindful of how we affect others with our with our body. Yeah.
How we wear our robes.
Yeah, mindfulness of our robes. What kind of visualization are you giving? Yeah. Oh yeah, mindfulness of those holy objects. Doing the water bowl offerings? Yeah. remembering to do the outer world offerings and then doing it mindfully. Yeah.
Being mindful of all the different tasks that we do each day.
Yeah.
Changes all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Practice. Did I show up?
Right,
It's on my docket today.
right. So staying mindful of our responsibilities, of our commitments to others, or mindful of our chores, mindful of Dharma books, their care, and like that. Oh my goodness, yes.
The shovels, the trucks.
Yeah. So mindful of all the Abbey's tools, property stuff that we handle every day. Yeah, definitely. Sangha funds. Care with Sangha funds. Well, that's a whole other topic. Yeah, okay. All right, somebody please take a picture because we've got 3 more to go.
Well, also related of the kindness of our donors.
Oh yes, mindful of the kindness of our donors. That we are living on the kindness of others constantly. Oh, mindful of that. Okay, gratitude and respect. I am not aware of any mental factor definitions that describe gratitude or respect. Are you? No. But in the section of the Lam Rim on how to relate to the spiritual mentor, there's actually quite a lot on gratitude and respect. So this topic or this value of gratitude and respect is not just for the spiritual mentor in the way that Venerable means it, but I think there's some teaching there in the Lam Rim that's useful to apply both to the spiritual mentor and to other people. So I'll come back to that, what Lama Tsongkhapa says. We'll start with what Thupten Chödrön says. Gratitude and respect, we are grateful, when we are grateful for the goodness around us and respect others' excellent qualities and beneficial deeds, our own hearts open and we can progress along the path. Does that make sense? Gratitude and respect cannot be forced. We cannot make ourselves feel them, nor can others demand them from us. Nor can we demand them from others. We can try. They are traits that we consciously cultivate because we see their benefit. That's something to think about. That respect is a trait we consciously cultivate. Gratitude is a trait we constantly cultivate. Has she done a discussion on respect? Sometimes EML comes up with, or maybe it's more Young Adult Week where we have the respect discussion. But somehow these are a little bit slipperier in my mind. They don't come up in the context of the teaching so much, so explicitly. But we all want people to respect us. It's kind of a big need, according to Marshall Rosenberg. We all need respect. And yet, how much do we respect others? How do we respect others? What does respect actually mean? I mean, that's something to spend some time reflecting on, actually, for ourselves. And then also this quality of gratitude. A grateful mind is a happy mind. A grateful mind is a contented mind. And when we do something that we're really encouraged to do, and I am a big advocate for it, when we do some meditation on the kindness of others every single day, we are happier people. Because, gosh, where did I just hear this? Was it a BBC somebody did, or did somebody tell me this at UU? This thing, there's now a scientific proof that scientific proof, quote, because of the way we evolved as a species, we're more inclined to look for problems. We said that at UU. Oh, yeah, it's in Buddhist brain, right. Well, I'm not sure I buy into it either, but it's an interesting idea. That okay, so, but what's also true, I mean, what I think is true, is that we are naturally more inclined to see faults than good qualities. Not because it's wired necessarily into us, for whatever reason. But habit, yeah, it could be habit. But if you just say, if 10 people praise you today and one person criticizes you, what are you going to think about all night long? Not their praise. Their praise is totally forgotten. But that criticism, working it. Was it true? Was it not true? Why did they say it? What was the point? Is it really true? I could have done this differently and I wouldn't have been criticized in that way. 9-1. Right? So, regardless of the cause, that's where our mind goes. And it's the same thing with thinking about the kindness of others. We can spend our whole lives. I spent a lot of years thinking about all the things I didn't have in my childhood. Well, excuse me. I'm still alive. I was fed reasonably well. There were many, 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 many good things. So retraining our minds to be grateful for what we have received and what we receive daily helps tremendously in making our minds happy. And then, when we're grateful for the goodness around us and respect others' excellent qualities and beneficial deeds, then we're happy. We're happy to be in relationship with one another, and we can support each other to go forward on the path. So we reflect on the kindness of the three jewels. We reflect on the kindness of our spiritual mentors. We reflect on the kindness of our Dharma companions and our parents and all sentient beings. And then, as we know from the meditations on developing bodhicitta, if we really develop that, then the wish to repay that kindness naturally arises. It makes our whole bodhicitta motivation much less effortful. It helps us to get that spontaneous feel, because we naturally want to repay that kindness. We naturally feel a sense of love then. And training ourselves to recognize others' good qualities develops respect. And that tamps down the judgmental, critical mind, which also makes us happier. And it's a real part of our monastic training at the Abbey. So, what she didn't put here, and what is really important in the context of doing these two things with our spiritual mentor, Lama Tsongkhapa talks a lot, and I didn't copy this out, but he talks a lot about how if you have the habit of finding fault, get rid of it immediately. Immediately. Yes. Lama Tsongkhapa. Lama, that's the Lama. Tsongkhapa, Tsongkhapa. And this is in volume 1 of the Lamrim Chenmo, about page 24 or something. But it's under relying on a spiritual mentor. Your spiritual mentor might have good qualities for the most part and have only slight faults. If you examine your spiritual mentor for faults, this will block your attainments. Whereas, even in the case of a spiritual mentor who has mostly faults, you will give rise to your own attainments if you train in faith by focusing on their good qualities. Does that make sense? Tsongkhapa language? What that means is, if they have mostly good qualities and small faults, but all we do is pick at the small faults, then our respect won't be there, our trust won't be there. And what does it do? It blocks our mind, the very person who we're relying on to guide us on the path to full awakening. We're picking at. What does it do to our mind? Not very receptive. Whereas, even you have a person who has a lot of faults, not even very many good qualities, but if we're only looking at their good qualities, we'll have a lot of faith in them and be able to learn what we can from them. So generally speaking, I don't think any of us have chosen teachers. Well, I can't say that. I can't say that. What I can say is the teacher we have here is not one who has mostly faults. Right? So if we're looking at the good qualities and really reflecting on those good qualities again and again and again and again and again, then the appreciation for that, for any of our teachers, will arise. When we practice doing that with each other, then our appreciation for our Dharma friends naturally arises, and our experiences of their faults become less, and we are more tolerant of the faults when we see them. Therefore, once someone is your spiritual mentor, whether he or she has small or great faults, contemplate the disadvantages of examining those faults. Repeatedly think about eliminating that tendency and then stop it. Moreover, pay attention to the good qualities that the teacher has, such as ethical discipline, learnedness, and faith, and reflect on those qualities. Once you become conditioned to this, you may notice that your teacher has a small number of faults, but this won't impede your faith. So I think that it's most important to do in regards to the teacher. But it's important to do, it has an effect no matter who we're talking about. It makes our respect arise. So it's interesting. It's not like, often we think that person has to be worthy of my respect. Objectively, that has to be an object that is worth it. But what Lama Tsongkhapa here is saying is, no, that's in your mind. That respect is cultivated from this side. I appreciate that. And I will say, I went through a period, I always say I'm going to go back to it, and I haven't, but when the community was smaller, so it wouldn't take as long as it would now, where every single night before I went to bed, I wrote down the good qualities or some act of kindness that I had experienced from every single person in the community. I needed to. This wasn't because I was a great practitioner. This is because I had such an unruly mind. But it helped a lot. A lot. It was a very good habit to get into. And I think it helps being in community just to, apply those kinds of things a lot. Appreciation and respect for others is shown through our behavior. This is Venerable Children again. We bow to the three jewels when we enter the meditation hall. We do a half bow to other members of the community. We greet visitors to the Abbey with our palms together. By remembering their Buddha potential and respecting that quality, we also recall our own Buddha potential. Okay. Oh, I knew this was going to take longer than we needed to. We're almost out of time. So much for wiping off the board. I'm going to go through the last two kind of quickly because we're about out. So we've developed this on the basis of this respect and gratitude then. Having humility and the willingness to accept instruction arises more easily. This is not easy, this one. Venerable, I think, has used this analogy this week already. Just as grass doesn't grow on the top of a mountain, but grows in the fertile valleys below, Dharma realizations grow not in the mind of an arrogant person, but in the minds of those who are humble and willing to accept instruction. So this is not about low self-esteem at all. It's not about groveling and thinking that we're less than, and so the venerables or the gurus or the seniors or the whomever is going to bestow some kind of whatever because we're so unworthy. It's not that at all. But it is having that respect for people for our teachers, people who are more senior in ordination, or who have more experience in the Dharma, and being open or being willing to learn. In the movie The Jew and the Lotus, The Jew and the... It's also a film. It's also a video. What's his name? Roger Kaminsky? No. Anyway, there was in the video, I don't think this was in the book. In the video, there's a scene where there was a time when His Holiness had called upon the Jews of the world to actually come meet with him because he was looking at how to maintain the Tibetan culture throughout the diaspora. And the Jewish world has done it for eons, millennia anyway. So how did they do that? How did they maintain the Jewish culture intact through all the places and times that Jews have been run out of places and gone other places, right? So in this video, you see this scene where His Holiness is sitting with rabbis from all different types of Judaism. And they're talking for a while. And what I remember is there was I think he was Hasidic. You'll have to tell me just from the look. Lots of hair, white, long beard, lots of hair. He's had his little yarmulke on his head, or maybe more hat than that. Yeah, big hat. And His Holiness asks a question, and then one person answers briefly, another person answers briefly, and then this guy starts talking. And he talks. And he talks, and he talks. And I can't remember whether you actually hear his dialogue or not, but I have the sense that it was sort of esoteric, kind of out there. So you must be able to understand what he's saying. And you can see that these other rabbis are starting to go, and they're starting to sigh and look around and look at their feet, and they're shifting in their chairs, and His Holiness is rapt, like completely focused on this man. He's taking in every word he says. And I thought, that is humility, like I have never seen. The Dalai Lama listening to a guy who seems to be totally off on some cloud, but completely willing to hear whatever he has to share. Because he asked for their help. It just, it brings tears even as I think about it. That kind of humility and willingness to hear, to learn from anybody. That's what humility is really about. And so, and I don't have it. Let me just say, I admire it. But I aspire for it. But to be able to be open in that way, to listen and learn from anybody who is around us, will make us progress much further, faster along the path. Much faster. And here then, having developing the capacity to hear someone's feedback. And our early training was, when you get feedback, you put your hands together and you say thank you. I don't hear that emphasized quite so much anymore. It's still hard to do, but to really practice, thank you. Just thank you. Not, but, no. Thank you. Helps us be able to open to hear. And then we can, when our ego, I must say, when our ego is less sensitive, when we've matured enough in our practice to recognize that everything that anybody says isn't going to actually destroy me, then we can have the wherewithal to be able to assess within ourselves, is this accurate or not? Is this somebody just seeing through their own distortion and I can let it go? Or is this something that really is a useful piece of advice and there's some truth here I need to listen to? Now we can discern that within ourselves when we're receptive enough to be able to just hear it and say thank you. And have developed enough self-confidence to know that we're not going to get shattered when we get it. So it takes time. But when we go through these, as we develop this capacity, this humility and willingness to accept instruction, we'll get more instruction, which is helpful. We'll be guided along the path. Being able to accept feedback gracefully shows respect for our teachers. And then we remember that the goal of Dharma practice is not to make our self-centered mind comfortable, feeding our ego everything it desires. Then, when giving feedback to others, we first check our own minds to make sure that we are speaking with kindness. When somebody else's behavior disturbs us, it is helpful to wait a day or two to comment. Give us time to settle and think about how to say it, clarify our motivation. And then there are other ways to deal with that too. But, and I'm not sure where that's here, but she says, regardless, if someone gives us feedback, whether they do it skillfully or not, accepting it with grace, and then, forgiving if it's not so skillful, letting that go. And then the last one is rejoicing, which we do in our stand-up meeting every day. We go around and Say what we rejoice in that day. It's helpful. So rejoicing means what? Taking delight. So we rejoice in goodness. We take delight in goodness. We rejoice in virtue. We take delight in virtue. We rejoice in others' good qualities. We rejoice in others' happiness. We rejoice in our own happiness. We need to rejoice actually to create merit. The more we rejoice, the greater our merit. You'd think that it would come more easily, wouldn't you? We're a little puritanical in our approach. But rejoicing is really, really important and vital. And rejoicing in each other's effort, rejoicing in each other's merit, rejoicing in each other's practice, also then makes us more joyful as a community. And supports us along the path. Needless to say, those around us benefit when we directly express our joy and their good qualities in actions. It's a practice we try to cultivate in our daily interactions, and we incorporate it more formally as a group practice in our bi-monthly Posada ceremony. So, sorry we rushed through those last few because it would be good to get some community feedback, but I know we need the break. So, these are the 7. They're on the website. You can study them whenever. And they are in these cute little toggle drop-downs so they don't take up all the space on the page. Non-harmfulness, compassion, generosity, mindfulness, gratitude and respect, rejoicing, humility, and the willingness to accept instruction. I will reverse the order there. Yeah. On the website, they're under Monastic Mind. Discover Monastic Life, and then Monastic Mind. The Monastic Mind prayer is on the other side. And so I thought it would be nice to end with the Monastic Mind prayer, because now we know where a lot of this stuff came from. But it's also, I think it's useful, this is kind of why I thought it would be an annual review as a community to remember that these are really the foundations of Sravasti Abbey and what Venerable had in mind before there was even a place. This, she said, is what we will grow from. And I've had an opportunity a couple of times to talk to people who want to start nunneries, 3 times actually. And I've tried to tell them this. And it seems that mostly it's not their fault, but we get so caught up in the, how do we form a 501c3? How did you do the buildings? What, the physical part. But honestly, this is the most important. If this monastery fell down tomorrow, if every building built to last 1,000 years suddenly got blown up or something, these values would still be the essence of what's happening at Sravasti Abbey. And they are the essence of the practice of any monastic that walks out of here. Whether we're conscious of them or not, we're embodying and living and cultivating these qualities, and they go with us wherever we go. So to be explicit and aware of them, I think, is extremely precious. And y'all take them with you wherever you go. They're on the website.